Good day, everyone. Richard Cowperthwait for Northwest Access TV. Thanks for joining us for another show as we get ever closer to Vermont Town Meeting Day. And happy to be talking about Swanton Town issues with the Swanton Town manager. Very good to see Brian Savage and the Swanton Select Board Chairman, Joel Clark. Thanks for the time.
You're welcome.
Folks,
Thank you.
good to see you.
Good to see you.
Boy, I should know, we're taping this show on, where are we? Wednesday, February 26th, if I got the right date
Right,
here.
yeah.
We're just 6 days before Town Meeting Day. I guess you're coming off a public info meeting, which was just last night, in fact?
was
Monday night.
Monday.
Sorry, Monday night, 2 nights off. And Brian, I talked to you off air as in my old reporting days, as someone who covered 1 million public info meetings, just attendance. It sounds like nothing much has changed in the last 20 years, just in terms of kind of general public folks who are not connected with the town, just very poor attendance
It
as
was a
usual.
very light turnout, extremely light.
Yeah.
Nothing unusual, though.
Yeah. Anyway, but you covered, and you got together with the village on that. That was
Right.
joint village
We do
town.
it joint.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Joel, it seems like every year I have the same thought that Vermont Town meetings, an institution I love. I've been dealing with them forever, but it just seems to kind of fade more and more. Is that just me, or do you get that sense too, or kind of
No,
does it depend on the year and the issues, maybe?
I think it depends a little bit on the year and the issues. Last year, there was a little more, there were more issues, one of them being the public facility for the fire, police, and so
Right.
on that the village had, so there
Yeah.
was definitely more in the crowd for that. And then the whole policing issue with the
Big
town,
issue.
there were a couple issues that brought a few more people. This year, as Brian said, it was definitely light, and even as far as Zoom, very few zoomed in, and it's too bad. More participation would be a good thing.
Yeah. Joel, I should know we have 2 contested select board races in Swanton. You're running for re-election for a 3-year term and being challenged by Alan Letourneau. And we have a 3-year race for a 2-year term with the incumbent Brendan Long, who was appointed a while back, and the other challengers, Nick Brasso and Brendan Kelly. So 2 contested select board races. Anyway. There were big issues a year ago. The police, is that still a big issue with Swanton Town, of course, Swanton Village,
It's more a village issue, but it does affect all the ratepayers if it goes through. Or the police issue, yeah, I was thinking of the facility, so.
Hey, big issue, a couple of big issues.
Right, so the police issue, I think, is settled down, and from my perspective, what we're doing with the police department right now is working well. 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year is what we contract with the village for.
Did those hours change? Did they change those hours, or?
It was 8, and it went to 10.
Right.
And
But I
then-
mean, the time they're covering during the day, do those,
It's the same
Yeah.
same time.
yeah,
If there's something special going on, we can work with them. If there's a certain road we want a little extra patrol on, different time, they're flexible and accommodating that. And then there's a couple other things that they've been doing outside of those 10 hours, and they get us a report each month of what they're doing.
yeah.
One of the issues, we have a couple roads where the school buses, the speeds of people passing around the school
Yeah.
buses and so on is a safety issue, and we've got support from the village to spend some extra time following those routes and trying to calm the traffic down.
Yeah, the article, again, looking for voter approval for about $478,000. Is that figure up much from a year ago, or?
It's up slightly from a year ago.
Yeah.
If anyone, I encourage anyone to read the police chief's report on the activities of the police department that is in the town report.
Yeah.
It spells out pretty well what they are doing. They're certainly earning their money, so to speak.
Yeah.
A lot of major cases, drug arrests primarily, unfortunate, but it's the times that we live in.
Yeah.
And as Joel pointed out, the chief comes to the first select board meeting of each month and gives
really?
us a nice report, and shows activities even down to traffic stops and tickets issued or warnings given. So a very open line of communication. So so we certainly encourage support of that budget this year.
Your counterpart in Swanton Village, Bill Sheets, would proudly say for years that Swanton Village had the only, I think he was saying, the only fully staffed police department in the state, and had him on the show a little while ago, and I guess you're down a couple positions, which you're obviously trying to
Right.
avoid. Good luck. If you want to be a police officer in Vermont and you have a good background, boy, I would think you could get a job within seconds. I mean, it sounds like everybody's after cops.
There is a very serious shortage of police officers, I believe throughout the nation, but definitely in Vermont.
Yeah.
That strikes home here, so, yeah.
But coverage, that hasn't affected you getting the coverage that you signed up for in the town?
That's correct. It hasn't affected the coverage. They are adjusting the shifts, and one of the officers who spends more time usually in the office has been tasked in spending more time out in the village, freeing up an officer to cover the shift for the town. So far, no effect on the coverage.
Right.
Right, boy, a year ago, that was a very close vote for Swanton Town. Boy, and I forget the margin, but it was a very
It
close
was-
vote that you got approval
Right.
for.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It was a significant jump in the annual budget, and that's what caused a lot of concern.
Yeah,
What I encourage people to do is to get out and ask more questions about the policing and so on. It's not just sitting on the side of the road,
yeah,
looking for people that are speeding. There's a lot of paperwork involved, especially with some of the drug busts and so on that take place, and a lot of time is spent with all the paperwork that they have to do as well. And
Yeah.
they're busy. There's a lot going on.
I know, certainly when I had shows a year ago for the candidates in contested races, one of the candidates who wasn't successful was opposing the police budget request, just thought it was too much money. And I asked that person, if that goes down, then what? Oh, state police will cover us. And I think I even had a comment after that. I mean, state police, of course, are understaffed as well.
understaffed.
And
That's
so
right.
for folks who are assuming that state police would take over for Swanton, I think they're to some extent dreaming, I would think.
I would say yes.
sure.
Given my tenure as former police commissioner for
Right,
the
for the
village of
village.
Swanton,
Yeah.
and what Joel said about the paperwork was the biggest eye-opener that I had when I started writing shifts with the police back, we're talking 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But I'm sure the paperwork has not decreased, and so that's a major impact in the amount of time that officers are off the street.
Yeah.
And the state police, my legislative days are shorthanded. They're down a significant number of officers throughout
Yeah.
the state, and there's only so much they can cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have one in Franklin County, and if they're in Richford, what's the response
That's
time
right.
going to be to something here in Swanton?
Right.
Yeah.
And even though the town just does the 10 hours,
Yeah.
there's the village police in the other time frame, and if something
Yeah.
were happened in the town that
Yeah.
it was a true emergency, they would be available.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's a big difference.
Right.
And for voters to give that up, I think would be something that wouldn't be very good for the residents of Swanton.
Do you get the sense that most people you talk to are reasonably satisfied with Swanton Village PD coverage, Joel?
I think for the most part, it hasn't been a big talking point this
Yeah.
year as it was last year, but
Yeah.
that in itself tells me that people overall are okay with it.
Yeah. And speaking of big talking points, what's the most, what issues do you mostly hear about when you're talking to voters, residents, concerns, complaints, whatever? Any big issues?
I don't think there's any big issues, in the winter time frame, you get some about the snow plowing
Yeah.
and stuff, but overall, the road crew does a great job keeping our roads clean and safe. And I think budget is always an item people bring up, taxes and affordability.
Yeah.
So that's a big concern. I know you talked about the police department, and that was about a 3% increase, so it was not very large. The interesting thing for the town voters is between the general budget and the highway budget, it's gonna be a very small decrease. So
Really?
basically, it's gonna be level funded
Pretty much
between them
flat.
all. Yes.
How'd you manage that?
a lot of pencil sharpening and discussion. And keep in mind that that's based upon the 2024 grand list. I would
Okay.
assume, I don't even know what happens when you assume, but I would assume that the grand list will go up, so that will help the tax rate as
Yeah.
well. And we won't know that till later, much later into the spring.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of pencil sharpening, a lot of number crunching, and like in the highway department, that's always it's dependent on the weather. And so we started out the year, and we saw what started happening this winter with the weather. A couple of inches here, a couple of inches there, and the guys were out every morning early because it would turn to ice if they didn't take care of it.
Yeah.
So Kathy Fournier, our town clerk and treasurer, she says, I think I better increase the budget for overtime because they're out. And I said, that's probably a good move. And then we got hit with that big snowstorm. But again, you have to really watch the numbers, and everybody does a real good job at doing that. And the highway guys especially were out a lot, but they've got everything in good shape.
Yeah.
It was us watching the numbers.
Well, I finally did get a big storm. Montreal, I usually end my day, if I happen to be awake, to catching Montreal news from 11:30 to midnight. And boy, the snowstorm, same storm that we got, Montreal, I think that might have been a top 10. They got a lot more snow, and the city is still like about 50% cleaned out. I mean, it's still a huge issue. And just towing 1 million cars, but I mean, I just see that we're what, a week or two after that storm, and it's
They're still digging it
huge,
out.
huge
Yeah.
issue up there. What were you going to say, Joel?
Oh, I just, in regarding the budgets, we were very fortunate. We were able to trim the highway budget a fair amount that covered the increases in some of the other budgets. Some of the projects that we budgeted for in the highway, we didn't have to carry over as much money into 2025, so that really allowed us to keep things under control. The biggest budget pressures that we have are medical insurance, and that's, you hear that all the time, whether it's at the town level or at school level, et cetera. And then dispatching is something that is, for the fire and the police, dispatching cost is something that impacts the budget quite a bit, that we can't seem to get a good handle on and get it to a reasonable number.
Boy, health insurance, I mean, I hear that every day. It just seems to be a huge issue out there. Read a story today, typically municipalities dealing with budgets, seeing employee health insurance increases of about 12% or so, and that may be all over the map, but is that sound about right for you
believe it
folks?
was
Or
something like that. It was the premiums charged by the insurance company.
Right, and then, when you got a $200,000 budget,
Yeah.
let's just say it's rec,
yeah,
and we bring on a new employee,
yeah,
if they don't have health coverage from a spouse or something,
yeah,
just the additional health, if we don't have it budgeted, could be like
Right.
tens of thousands of dollars.
Really?
So all of a sudden, it just spikes the budget for that one line item.
yeah,
Yeah,
And-
so,
right,
And most of the municipalities in Vermont, there's only two insurance companies they're able to get their coverage through, but I think they're probably all pretty similar. So yeah, it's expensive, but able to be competitive in the workplace and the marketplace.
Yeah.
We have to offer, be somewhat consistent with what our peers are doing throughout the area if we want to keep employees.
yeah.
So it's between being a rock and a hard place.
Sounds like it. How are you doing staff-wise? Pretty stable staff for the town of Swanton? How many employees?
Actually, we're very stable. We have, for the town operations, we've got, I always have to say, we got 4 actual full-time employees in the office. We've got a couple of part-time positions. The listers are elected. And then in the highway department, we've got 4 that are on staff full-time.
Yeah.
And 2 in the recreation department and 2 in the library that are full-time. We also have a part-timer that works for the summers and on-call as needed in the winter for the highway department. So we're really a small group, but we get the job done, I think, pretty efficiently.
yeah, about a dozen total.
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah.
Any reappraisal? A lot of towns, cities are running into, I'm a St. Albans City resident, reappraisals kind of getting underway in St. Albans City. What about town of Swanton?
Well, interesting, we had just received, a couple of weeks ago, the listers received notice from the state of Vermont, basically ordering that we do a reappraisal.
Right,
And
really?
get the process started. We have not had a reappraisal since 2007.
Wow.
And of course, they're seeing what the values are going through at, what the values are versus what the sale prices are.
Yeah.
So the select board, I brought that to the selection of the select board at their last meeting. And so the listers are starting to do inquiry amongst appraisal firms to see who's available.
Well, I was going to say, isn't it getting even hard to find firms?
Yeah.
Because so many
Well,
municipalities are doing
the
this.
state has a list, a suggested list
Yeah.
to choose from, and we prefer to try to get as local people, Vermont firms,
Sure.
as possible.
Yeah.
Because if you hire an out-of-state firm, you have to pay for their expenses, lodging, transportation, meals, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, but in speaking to one firm, and they're going to report back on April 1st to the board, but in talking with them yesterday, one firm they talked to, that they would not be able to start until 2030, to start the
Right,
the
is that right?
appraisal. And it'll take
2030.
about 3 years to do it, and do it right. So, yeah, the discussion is starting in very, very early stages, but however, dates keep changing. The state has changed them apparently, and but yeah, it's going to be coming. But I'd encourage everybody who's watching this, do not panic. It's going to be a ways out there, and we certainly will make every effort to keep everyone informed of the progress being made as we go forward.
How many budgets, is this your second budget, Brian, that you've?
This was my third one.
Third budget?
All right.
Does it get any easier? Does it get more complicated, or?
Well, it's pretty much, we follow the same format from year to year, but
Yeah.
you always are trying to, well, Joel was very instrumental, since he is the road commissioner, and he and Kevin Lepan, our highway foreman, along with Kathy, worked up the highway budget. I just basically get all the numbers in. I send out the memo saying all the departments, you need to start budgeting and get your stuff into us. And then Kathy does all the compiling of all of it, and so that it's ready to go to the select board, and then the various heads of the agencies or the departments will come in and discuss it at a meeting with the select board, and then the select board has questions. There could be some back and forth. This year went pretty smooth.
It did.
And of course, the big chunk of money, as was already said, is the police and fire department, which
Yeah.
the village, we contract with the village. They were very good. They came in and gave an explanation as to why there was and it was a fairly modest increase dispatching for both the police and fire department. State police used to dispatch Swanton PD for free. About a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, they put everybody on notice they weren't going to do that. Swanton Fire was already being dispatched, and has been for quite a few years, by St. Albans Central Dispatch for the city of St. Albans. So the village contacted the city about taking over the Swanton PD dispatch through Central Dispatch. And last year was the introductory offer, which wasn't too bad. This year, that price went up. Of course, that affects what we pay. Dispatching is an expensive but obviously necessary part of the budget. And the state police weren't going to take it back because they're short on dispatchers. So I still think it's cheaper to do it, to contract it like we're doing for both the town and the village, rather than to set up our own dispatch, which I would not be in favor of, because that's an expensive setup. And you have to have it staffed 24/7, 365, with no exceptions.
Sounds pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is the figure for fire protection about 316,000? Is that up? Is
Up
that-
slightly, again,
Yeah.
slightly.
So there's a lot of that
Equipment
equipment, I
in there
assume?
also they try to keep their big ticket items, equipment up to date, and plan for it without any significant hit to the budget. Their call volume was, pretty high this year. It was over 300, it was 301 calls
Really?
that were dispatched out.
Do they get called out just for motor vehicle accidents routinely?
A lot of motor vehicle accidents, and the full reports in,
Right.
the hazmat, everything, it doesn't take much to be a hazmat.
Really?
And just a variety of things, medical assist, mutual aid calls, the actual structure fires, I think that was 3% of the calls, an actual structure, confirmed
Right.
structure. There may be a suspect of smoke in a building or something, but the actual fire, I think it was like 3%.
Yeah.
But you have to always be ready.
This is still a volunteer fire department, correct? Or
Yeah,
It's
they're-
volunteer. force.
Yeah,
And
it
their-
is.
Their payroll
Fire-
actually
Yeah. they're paid.
held that. level.
firefighters get paid if they're called out? They'll
Right,
get a
only when
stipend?
they're called,
Only
they
when
get
they're called
paid
out.
by the hour, and trust me, nobody's in it for the money.
But of course, you're a long time.
I'm retired now,
Retired
but I
now.
did it for 30 years, and
Interesting.
it was very enjoyable. Unfortunately, like everything, their numbers of personnel are going down.
Is that right?
When it should be going up.
Yeah.
But people aren't getting into it. Nobody wants to step forward.
Yeah.
And it's I would encourage anybody, if they're at all possible, male or female, if you're in physically decent shape, in good health, in the 20s, anybody over age 18 and older, it is a young person's job.
Yeah.
But I would encourage anybody, it's a very rewarding experience.
Yeah. St. Albans Town, of course, a couple of years ago, went over to having one full-time,
Yeah.
I guess, public safety
Yeah.
officer, Bob Cross, who's running for the select board, the former
Yeah.
longtime fire chief, had that job. Is that something Swanton is considered? You don't need that, presumably? Is that come up at all?
Well, that would be that would be a discussion with the village, since they
Right.
own the department.
Right.
And I think right at the moment, that the present chief is an employee of the village. So, but, at some point, we never know what the future is gonna hold.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly was talked about in the
It has
past.
been
and
talked about.
Hasn't come up lately
Right.
that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I'd just like to put in a plug for the volunteer fire department, that not
Yeah.
only all the runs that we just talked about,
Yeah.
but they made a very conscious effort in 2024 to come out on Saturday mornings and do volunteer work.
Really?
Putting flags up in the park and helping us take them down.
Huh.
We had an instance of some graffiti on a couple buildings on a Friday night, and by noon on Saturday, they were already painting over
Really?
it. And that's all
Yeah.
their
All
time.
their time.
And they made a conscious effort to get out in the community and make
Right.
people aware of who they are and what they do. And I think that's something that they certainly should be
Yeah,
recognized for.
they do a great job. They can always be counted on. If you don't know, who to call for a situation like the graffiti,
Yeah.
they'll
Yeah.
come step forward.
So in the general fund budget, nothing too new in that? It's pretty much kind of usual?
Pretty
Standard.
standard. There was a slight increase for Missisquoi Rescue, again, very visible. That's funded out of the general budget, because both the town and the village people, it's done through the general fund of the town.
Yeah.
Very modest increase with them. The library, there was an increase, primarily, again, that was some of the insurance factor in the payroll and that.
In fact, there are
insurance
two,
is a big,
Insurance, yeah.
two articles on the library. Is that all?
It is the way it is. It is a
Yeah.
little confusing.
Huh.
So the library, we have the library building, okay, that's town real estate, we own it.
Yeah.
It requires maintenance and operations, so there's that budget. And then there's a library, sort of an appropriation for the operations of the library, which would include books and periodicals and other supplies. So that's why that's a request that comes from the library board for the town for support. So there's two articles there. It's a little confusing, and I think there'd be a better way of not
Yeah, we'll
having it
work
as
on that
confusing.
for next year.
Yeah.
It was a change, the physical condition of the building for years was underfunded. And a couple years ago, the select board decided to save the building. They had to make some changes in how that was
Yeah.
funded. And
Didn't the basement in particular, there have been some issues with that
There's-
building?
There's been a lot of issues.
A lot of
Yeah.
issues.
A lot of issues,
Yeah.
yes,
Huh.
yeah.
It's one where the longer you neglect it, the more it's
The
gonna
worse it
cost you to
gets.
fix it. And so that's changed now.
Yeah,
Big effort has been made to improve the facility. There's a big project we're gonna do this spring to insulate underneath the roof to stop some of the ice buildup and to save energy, et cetera.
yeah,
And putting that kind of attention did increase the budget. I took a look this morning at what it was in 2020 and what it is now in 2025. It's almost doubled. But now that we've got the budget to where it really should be, there should not be a significant increase every year.
Yeah.
It should get down to more of the health insurance type issues and that sort of thing. But the right amount's going in to maintain that facility now.
interesting. Library does pretty well participation-wise?
Oh,
does it seem?
absolutely, yeah. You know,
it's good
there's
library.
a lot of activity that goes on over there.
Yeah.
For all ages, right, from little kids on up to senior citizens.
Yeah.
There's always something going on.
That
A lot of
parking
programs.
lot's almost always
Always
full during the
full.
hours
Yeah.
that it's open, so it's a great resource.
You know, it's an interesting dynamic in downtown Swanton in general. It sometimes can be a little hard to find a parking space now, which is a good
Interesting.
thing.
Yeah, which someone
Yeah.
told me one time, that's a good thing.
But yes, including our parking lot. So there's a lot of activity in that whole area. So that's a good thing. So,
Have you got to send the village, of course, a huge issue in the village a year ago was a public safety building, and it just seemed to be running into a sticker shock issue and was defeated decisively, I think, to no one's surprise. And the village, of course, has revamped that project quite a bit, lower price tag, a very different project. Have you got a sense, Joel? Do you think that project's got a decent shot at passing? Have you got a sense for the big village issue?
I have only been asked a few questions about it.
Yeah.
Some very reasonable questions.
Yeah.
I think it's got a shot.
Yeah.
It's really hard to say because they have held several public information meetings and had very little turnout.
Of course, last a year ago, they held something.
30-something.
30-something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
now it
incredible.
was down to 4 or 5, but
Right.
there was very low attendance, which
Yeah.
is too bad. And then you look on the internet and you see some of the discussion, but
Yeah.
I think, again,
I'm
for the
sure,
lack of
I'm
people.
sure with all accurate
Right.
information, of course, and stuff, right?
right,
On
right.
the internet, yeah, I don't think so, but the fact they didn't come up at our information meeting, I think was a good thing.
Oh, really?
That some of that negativity that was around last year and stuff, that,
Yeah.
I think they got a shot in it.
Yeah,
As a member of the town, and one where we work with their police and with their fire department, it is something they do need. They need that space.
yeah,
Move the electric department out, larger space for the police department to operate the way it needs to. They do not have adequate facilities right now, and fully supportive of this. As a person who buys my electricity from the village, I
Yeah.
fully support what they're
Yeah.
trying to do, and I think for the residents of Swanton, it's a good thing, and it'll be an improvement.
yeah. Brian, you're, of course, still a village
I'm a
resident.
village resident, and I will say this about this project.
Yeah.
It's desperately needed
Yeah.
for everything that Joel just mentioned. You know, last year, there was a lot of discussion, but nobody, you know, obviously, the bond issue didn't pass, but everybody was in agreement, for the most part,
Something needed to be
that
done.
something had to be done,
Yeah.
that the police they do not have enough room,
Yeah.
the building is too small, something has to be done. First of all, this is a well-thought-out project, and yes, it will go to the ratepayers, but the ratepayer base is much larger than the tax
I
base.
think it's about 3,800 or so compared to
3,800
1,600
meters,
or
yeah.
something.
There's about 3,800 meters. The projections, I guess, on an average kilowatt hour consumer would be like $10 a month on your bill. I fall into that category in looking at the kilowatt hours. And that's a worst case scenario. The
And at least folks are starting out with some of the still lowest electricity rates.
Right,
in the
and,
state.
the
yeah,
lower
third
tier.
lowest, and,
Third lowest.
and the other two that are lower are actually going for a rate increase,
Right,
so, you know,
right.
without the sugar off, it will still be low. And the thing to keep in mind, if we were customers of an IOU, investor-owned utility, which I probably,
Oh, yeah.
you know, they're out there.
Yeah.
We don't have to go too far. They just turn around and build the thing, and you'd be paying for it in your rate. Nobody would have any say into it, and it's desperately needed. And I fully support and encourage everybody to vote for
Yeah.
it in the village. Yeah.
So rec department, I'd be remiss if I didn't get into rec department a bit. For a while, it was looking like the town at some point was maybe going to go for a bond vote for a new rec center, community center, and haven't gotten into it too much, but it sounds like that's not what you're looking at now. Or what's new with the rec center? That's been getting plenty of attention for a number of years, and Brian too.
Yeah, rec is near and dear to me, that's why I've got the shirt on.
Yeah,
We,
you sure do.
we dedicated our report to the youth of Vermont, and
Yeah,
most
right.
of these pictures came from the rec department,
Really? That's cool.
which is great, because they are the future of Swanton.
Yeah,
Specifically regarding a facility for them, 2024, we did not make a lot of progress like we'd hoped to. As far as a bond vote for a large facility, and I can't speak for the rec department, but I know their desire is still to get a large facility where they could have basically another gym,
yeah,
because the gym utilization in Swanton is pretty much 100% plus. The bond vote last year with the other bond vote issue,
Right.
we figured it should come off the table. So we are looking at other options. Do we do a smaller facility, give them better office space, better storage space, some rooms for the public to meet? But down the road, and we don't have a good time frame yet, the Armory in Swanton, the National Guard is looking to replace that armory with a new facility in the Southern Growth District,
thank you. That was on my list to talk about too.
which
Yeah.
would combine St. Albans and Swanton armories, and that facility would become available. It might have to be purchased from the Guard. It's not, the Guard owns the facility versus the state buildings folks, so
Oh,
we'd
yeah.
have to work out something, but that is a possibility down the road. Unfortunately, it's several years out still, because they have not, I just checked the other day, they have not received their design funds yet, so you're talking a year or two of design, and then
Really?
you've got to get the money to build the facility, so.
So that
you're
definitely is
talking
several
5 to
years,
7 years
really.
at least, I think.
Okay,
So that puts it into the, 2032
Wow.
timeframe. So what do we do in the interim? We still have some of the ARPA funds, which are now called special funds, that we talked about at the town meeting, and we committed a certain amount of that money to rec. So now we've got to decide what we want to do to that, to bridge the gap. So that'll become something the select board will talk about very soon after elections, and start trying to come up with a plan and move forward.
yeah. Some ARPA money, American Rescue Plan money was allocated for rec for that,
Yeah.
for future.
600,000.
600,000.
Right.
Is that an issue? Is that money solid, or would you have to do something with that money,
Oh,
or?
we've done that.
Yeah,
You've done
we
that.
protect,
You're not losing
we've
that
done
money.
what we were given guidance to do to make sure that money
Okay.
would become available. That's why it's no longer considered
Right.
ARPA funds
It's-
anymore.
Right.
And now we've got that in a separate account.
So that's solid.
Special funds.
Yes.
Especially, yeah, and people have mentioned that to me before. Was there an access road issue? Weren't you still struggling a bit with what the best access road into the
No.
facility would be, or was that the new
There's-
facility?
There's varying
Okay.
opinions among the select
Yeah.
board on which road to access.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that right
Yeah.
now,
Right.
because if we're not putting that facility in there anytime soon,
Yeah.
that becomes less of an issue. But
Yeah.
there's some concern because of the quarry and the traffic in the
Right.
quarry. But that traffic is mostly during the day,
Huh.
when the use of the facilities is very low.
Yeah.
They close at about the time kids get out of school, and
Yeah.
then the different sports events take place there. So
Yeah.
there's some things that we can work on and make
Yeah.
sure that we're doing things in a safe operation. And-
I think those issues will be addressed when the design is really going to town on it. And, my own personal thing is that we should probably have two accesses in egress, primarily one for use for the public, but the other one in case of an emergency. If that building has to be evacuated and emergency services are coming in and everybody's leaving, emergency service goes in the way that everybody else is not coming, trying to get out of. So that's why two would probably better, but that's all for discussion later on. Yeah.
But recreation sounds like participation is very good. Your colleague Nicole Draper is still our recreation department chief.
Yes.
So it still sounds like you're getting it's a pretty active department, it sounds like.
Oh, very much so.
Very active between different sports events and other activities, and when the school is on vacation, they usually have stuff going on during the day, so the kids have something to do as well. A lot of people there, a lot of activity. It's great to see.
Just this morning, in fact, on Facebook, Nicole had put on, it was a school vacation, and over at her office, there was, I don't know, the camera was going around, but there was quite a few teenagers that were there already. That was early this morning.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely, yeah.
The Old Town Garage site by Mary Babcock Elementary, is that have you figured out what's going on with that?
Well, we figured out what we want to do with
know what we
it,
wanna
Richard.
do.
What we're dealing with is brownfields and
Oh, really?
the ongoing and never-ending testing that needs to be done. And then when you do the
Really?
test, you've got to send the report to the state, and the state comes back and says, okay, that's good, however,
Really?
now we want some additional testing. So we are into another stage of
Really?
additional testing.
That's been more of an issue than you thought it was going to be, or not
Yes.
necessarily?
Yeah, originally, we thought it was a much smaller area, and now vadnium, I think. Vadnium is the name of heavy metal that they test and found it in the area. The interesting thing is, it might be background. But
Background?
if it's specific to that area, then we gotta clean it up. If it's background in Swanton, so part of the testing is gonna be is to test these other areas and see what the level is naturally occurring in Swan, then we don't have to do anything, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Either it's an issue or it's not, but it's a very low level. So we're gonna go through this, once the frost is out of the ground, this next phase of testing.
Yeah.
Get the report back, and then come up with a cleanup plan that the state will accept, get that done, and then turn that into the additional rec fields that we agreed should be done there, but.
So that's a pretty solid plan
Right.
to do that?
Yes, that's
Because
the
there
plan.
That's the plan.
Initially had been some thought about housing possibly, correct?
but that
Or
was-
not long
that was
ago?
long
That
ago.
that was
That was before my
considered
time.
selling it
Yeah.
and
Right.
so on, and then it's like, wait a minute, you sell that land, you don't get it back, and
Oh.
right now the plan is for rec to use that.
Yeah.
So possibly like a pavilion too with the rail trail right there? Possibly any structure on that, or just a field you're thinking, or?
Right now,
It's
it's
just a
just
field.
fields. When we get to the discussion, maybe of the
We'll
LVRT,
talk
we do
LVRT in a
have a
second.
site plan, and that has a pavilion
Right.
as part of the project, which isn't too far from the rec fields, just on the other end of the fitness path.
Right, what's the acreage of that, of the former town garage site?
Very small.
Very small,
I think
less
it's
than
around,
2 acres.
right. I
Yeah.
think it's like
Yeah.
1.6 is what's.
Something, yeah, 1.6, 1.7 acres.
Yeah, speaking of
pretty small.
LVRT, I was sorry, of course, we're going back a couple of years when Governor Scott was going to come up, and Bernie and Governor Scott was gonna bike over to St. Jay.
Yes.
That never kinda came up again. Of course, flooding became an issue yet again.
Right, that's what canceled that first visit
Right.
for.
But you have
coming
good
up.
plans. Has anything started on the plans you have for
Well,
the Swanton end?
We've got a site
Oh,
plan to bring
oh,
up on
great.
there you
That's
go.
great.
guys.
There you go.
And
Good
there
job,
you go,
Joe.
Richard.
Good job, Joe.
We just opened bids on the 18th of February for construction.
Yeah.
So we had 5 bidders.
Huh,
What you can see here, Robin Hood Drive is basically vertical on here. On the left-hand side, as it says, a Swanton Health Path, which is a Dick Thompson fitness path.
yeah,
Go across Robin Hood, and that's the start of the LVRT. That's the western end of the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail,
yeah,
which is open as we speak. And then what you see just below the LVRT is a parking area, paved parking area, 21 spots. And the middle spots are designed so that you can get a trailer in there if you're gonna have a snowmobile. You
Right.
can get some trailers in there.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get a lot of them, but they will be available.
Yeah.
Has a picnic pavilion. Just gonna have a porta potty there, so we got a little structure to cover the porta potty.
Yeah.
Some bike racks, a bike repair station, and so on.
Oh.
We're evaluating bids as we speak. Right now, the estimated completion date is 1 August of 2025, so
Oh,
if
really?
everything goes well,
Wow,
we're
so
gonna get
this-
it done this year, and
Wow.
we'll ask the governor to come up and cut the ribbon for groundbreaking if he's available
Yeah.
and so on, so this should be the year we get this done finally, right?
That sounds great. So were you happy you got 5 bids, or were you expecting more than that, or was
We
that?
were very happy with 5.
Well, that
We
sounds- that
put this
sounds
out to
pretty
bid
good.
at the
Yeah,
late summer last year, and we got 0 because of the
Really?
flooding and the construction
Wow.
it's
So
late
you
in the
got 5
construction
bids?
season, so yes.
oh, that's great. So that should get done this year, this
Yes.
summer.
Should.
Yes.
Well, you're noticing, well, we're finally getting some winter around here, at least until the last couple of
sure.
days, but LVRT getting a fair amount you notice more traffic coming into town. Certainly snowmobilers have had a better year than they've had for a while, I guess, and cross-country skiers maybe.
I saw snowmobile tracks on
you
there for
did?
the first time last
Is
year.
that
There
right?
wasn't enough
First
snow
time?
to
Right,
put a snowmobile there.
Yeah.
So there were tracks, whether that was people already in the area or not
Right.
quite sure.
yeah,
But there has been more phone calls regarding the trail and where can we park. And
Yeah.
village parking is available right now, which isn't very far from
yeah.
the trail access. So
Huh.
there's more talk, and we definitely plan to advertise and to do more once we get this project done,
Yeah.
to promote it.
No, it sounds like a great resource for this area.
Right. I've, not this winter, I somewhat hibernate, but get out of my office. But of course, my office, I can't see the activity. If my office was up at the village complex, I probably
Yeah.
could see
Be all
more.
set?
But we do get, from time to time, we get phone calls and whatnot inquiring into the area, and that stepped up pretty much, well late into the fall. So
Yeah.
a lot of interest. So yeah, we're pretty excited about it.
And I know Nicole has said that she's got more calls
Yes,
about it and so
yeah.
on, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Lake Champlain water quality issues, I mean, it's been a big issue in Vermont for a long time. I'm not sure I hear as much about that these days, but Brian, does that get still some of your attention?
There is still, of course, issues with that. There was recently some information that came out, and they send us newsletters and whatnot.
Yeah.
I scanned the grant pages. I haven't seen anything coming out at me, but there is a group that wants to come talk to the select board at some point to discuss they're putting in some, for stormwater related issues. They're working at the Swanton Beach. Now, the Swanton Beach is owned by and operated by the village
Owned by the
on the
village.
Quam Shore, but
Yeah.
they'd like to come and there's a small segment that could affect the town on that, and they want to come talk to us. So
Huh.
they will be coming to
Yeah.
a select board to discuss that. So it's still very much out there. Of course, Joel lives right on McQuam Shore, and we have another select board member that also lives on McQuam Shore. So no, we certainly haven't forgotten it. That's still very
Yeah.
much there.
We did get several reports of blue-green algae, but
Last
I
year,
don't.
yeah.
From what I could see, I was interim health officer for a few months, and I would go check up at the beach and stuff. And
Yeah,
I don't think it was blue-green algae. If someone reported algae, so that gets it onto the state page, and that
Yeah.
made them send us some warnings about it. But
Yeah.
took a look and did not think that's what it was. The good thing is we get that western wind, which helps churn that water more than some places, and I
Yeah.
think that's kept it a little bit better in that area.
I know obviously some summers are worse than other summers, but I was logging time for a number of years out in West Swanton on McQuam Bay, but maybe going back a few summers when just seaweed or whatever, just stuff on the lake shore, and maybe you dealt with that yourself, but that issue kind of changes a bit from summer to summer. Is that an issue every summer or not?
changes from summer to summer,
Yeah.
we had more rainfall and stuff, which
Yeah.
helped this year.
Yeah.
McQuam Bay, a couple years ago was a pretty big deal with how low the lake got.
Of course, a very shallow bay to
Very,
begin
very
with.
shallow
Very
in there,
shallow.
and it had quite a smell to it as well as
Yeah.
the stuff was rotted and so on. But last year, it did not get anywhere near the number of complaints about that because we had
Yeah.
higher water and more water, so that
Yeah,
really
well, it
helped.
sounds like in my many years up here, it sounds like we've gone from St. Albans Bay to Missisquoi Bay to now more kind of Lake Carmine maybe is kind of the poster child for lake water quality issues, but it's the olive
It's
issues.
been a problem for, well, when I was a kid,
Yeah.
we'd go down to Macomb to the beach,
Yeah.
and there were some years it was pretty, the weeds were
you
quite
can- you
noticeable
can
as a kid.
remember that from a few years
Yeah,
ago?
quite a few
Interesting.
years ago,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so it's, yeah, it is, it's an issue, but,
Unfortunately, that end of the bay is gonna continue to fill in.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a natural occurring process up there.
and I was told that exactly by the state. They said there's really not much that
No,
they
and
can do.
there's no interest and appetite to dredge it, and where would you put all the material that you dredged out of
Yeah.
there? It's kind of a natural progression at the very end of the bay.
Yeah. Any Missisquoi River news, anything to report on Missisquoi?
I don't have.
Not,
particularly.
no, on the Missisquoi River, of course, Route 78.
And that was on my list also.
I know they're going through the property acquisition.
Really?
Yeah, and they've, are working with some property owners right now, negotiating. The town owns some property that we settled over a year ago, I guess, we signed off on.
So again, the state's trying to get just a bigger right of way, or?
Correct.
Right,
In order to
right.
do the project,
To do
they
the
gotta go
project.
through these land transactions.
Right,
Yes.
and then there's also temporary easements they've got to get for construction and whatnot, but the land, the biggest chunk of land the town of Swanton owns is Riverside Cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, wherever a town road comes out, an intersection, there was some there too as well. But I do know some of the property owners who own substantial more, there's negotiations going on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that's progressing. We have three, this has been a long process going on, almost 2 years. A FEMA buyout of some property that's in the flood zones in Swanton.
Right.
So that's progressing. There's 3 properties.
Is that in the town or village? or-
Well, 1 is in the village, 2 are in the town.
No, really?
But only 3 people took advantage of it.
Huh.
But it's a town program, so the town, I'm running that until at such time that the one that's in the village, we will deed over to the village under the same restrictions for the FEMA buyout. It cannot be developed, it's
Oh, yeah.
mowed, it could be a picnic area if they want, but no building goes on it. So those are progressing. The property is now at the point that it needs to be appraised. Bid that out to bid. Those were opened, came back last Friday. There was 1 bid received, so, and it's within the budget for appraisals, so now I have contacted the appraiser and they'll be scheduling appraisals. And then it's been a very slow process.
Sounds like it. If a property owner says, no, you're not giving me enough money, can the state grab that through eminent
No,
domain? No,
no.
they can't. They cannot do that.
They cannot do that. This is one of the things.
Oh, really?
The owner is in control right up to the day of the closing. If they said, no,
Really?
I don't want it, that's it.
Interesting.
Right. Now, for the highway construction,
Yeah.
they can do eminent domain with that, but this is a FEMA buyout. So
Okay.
what that was is FEMA would only give 75% of the fair market value.
Oh, really?
And the state is funding the remaining 25%. So they're getting, they're being given the full 100% market value.
Interesting. But highway construction, the state can.
They can do
it
eminent domain, yeah.
As
they
I
can
would
do
have
that,
guessed,
yeah.
probably.
And
Here- yeah.
on Route 78, the paving that they did so far is holding up very good.
Yeah.
So
That's
that's
good.
good
That's a
that
good thing,
took place.
yeah.
And then We've asked the state to put some more guardrails along the river. We had the tractor trailer go off there last year.
Oh.
And that edge right there, if someone catches it, could end up down in the river. And the state has agreed to it. We don't have the time frame yet, but they're working through that process to get some more guardrails along the river.
Yeah,
And so then with the highway project, with eminent domain, the interesting thing is some of this real estate, and I'm not sure how they're working this, is owned by the federal government, so, yeah, so I'm not sure how that works out. but,
interesting. Truck traffic as much as ever, anything new?
yeah.
I guess
The
the
same.
hope is if they ever complete the final segment of the interstate like highway north of the
Oh,
border, I guess the
835.
hope is that'll maybe reduce truck traffic a bit through town.
It should,
Village,
it should, other than remains to be seen. I brought up, back in my legislative days, hopefully that'll help the traffic going through the village.
Yeah.
However, that intersection of First Street and I-89, probably gonna see more traffic, because
that's the point.
those trucks come across on fumes
Yeah.
to fill up down here.
No, is that right? Typically, we'll jump into Swanton to get gas.
Yeah, and including, and I showed my colleague this, the musical ride of the RCMP.
Huh.
And they come down, like 4th of July, they go to Boston or someplace.
No, is that right?
And they have these beautiful tractor trailers, and it's well advertised what
No,
they are.
really?
They pull off in Swanton and get fuel when they come in.
Really?
And they get it, they stop in Swanton on the way home to get
Huh.
it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've seen it several times, so. So that could be, and I know that's being addressed, exit 21 is being addressed by the state, because traffic is backing up there quite often, so that's being addressed.
Yeah, especially northbound.
Yeah, yeah.
At the end of the day there.
Oh,
That can be dangerous.
Very dangerous, so,
Yeah.
so I know they're addressing that. But A35, I think, is supposed to open this year.
Boy, hey, every once in a while, I'll ask the border when I'm crossing the border, and they'll usually kind of laugh at me anyway. But it kind of seems like it's moving along. But so you think that might be within a year or two?
Within a year or
They
two.
were working up there all summer.
Yeah, they had
made it
that
across the border a
overpass.
couple times.
Yeah.
and They were
They had that
constructing
overpass
away.
Yeah.
up there going over 133, so
Interesting.
I haven't been up there for a while, so.
Do you see much Quebec traffic in Swanton? Of course, the Canadian dollar is, boy, not doing well. I suspect that's not exactly an incentive for
Well,
folks, but
I went to fill up, political discussions aside, I went to fill up the other day up at Maple Fields in Swanton.
Yeah.
And all the pumps were full, and I was, I believe, the lone American car there.
is that right? A lot of upstate Quebec.
And even with the dollar difference, see some of them in the store too, the
Yeah.
grocery store.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
We won't get into national politics, but just with all the layoffs and the efforts to reduce, I didn't even think of it, but someone mentioned it to me. Any impact on Missisquoi National Wildlife Refuge with their already small staff? Have you heard anything
I
about
haven't.
those folks?
yeah,
I haven't.
Well,
I
we're
haven't
not
heard
exactly
anything.
talking a bloated staff out there. What are there,
No.
like 4, 5, or
right,
6
very
Right.
few.
to cover
And they have a lot of
thousands of acres?
volunteers, so,
Yeah.
no, I have not heard of any.
I hadn't thought about that, but that might be
But
one
it
of the
is a
local
good-
impacts.
Right.
I
It's,
haven't heard.
I have not heard.
Yeah.
I got several neighbors that could be impacted.
Is
and,
that- oh, is
causing
that-
a lot of frustration
is
with
that
them.
right?
Oh, yes,
Who have federal
federal
jobs.
jobs, oh, yeah.
And that makes me think of the border patrol and stuff. Gee, are some of these agencies kind of being exempted? I've no clue. The border patrol's certainly been busier around here.
Yeah, might take the border patrol, I feel is pretty safe when they're talking this
Boy, you
couple
think so.
hundred billion more that they're putting for protecting
For
the border.
protecting
So
the
I
border.
know they
You
talk
think
mostly in the south, but I'm
Right,
sure some
but
of it's
it's-
going up
No,
here as
no,
well.
the northern border's getting a lot
Right.
more attention.
That's
Yeah,
right.
you'd think if any federal folks were pretty safe, you'd think it would be those folks.
I would,
Right.
I would think so, I would hope so. but-
You would hope so.
Yeah.
Well,
What I think, and I keep reading about, is there some of the staff that are not the actual agents.
Yeah.
Some of the support staff might be
Yeah.
let go under this
Right.
quick letting go of the, what do they call the employees that are still probational?
Probation.
I
yeah,
was about to
probational.
mention
That's the
probationary
easy-
folks are
that's the easy
probably
ones to let
quickly
go,
on the
but-
chopping block.
The only
Right.
thing, I don't know, if you're probational and you've been hired, is probably for forecasting the amount of retirees that are going to be leaving, so somebody's nearing retirement, but anyways, that's, I'm glad I don't have the job of trying to figure that one out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joel, this is your second stint on the select board, or am I off one? Is it even maybe third or second?
Well, I did 8 years, 2012 to 2020,
Yeah.
and then I came on when Ed White stepped down, so there was the election last year, so this would be my second time in terms of elections.
You feel
in this stint.
the state government is dealing with this municipal government, does it just get tougher, more complicated, or is it not drastically different than your first years? Do you remember?
I don't think it's drastically different.
Yeah.
Back to the LVRT project,
Yeah.
because there's federal monies involved in that. That certainly is much more difficult than you would hope it would be for what's a basic parking lot, some basic asphalt, and a little
Right.
concrete to hold the pavilion up.
Yeah,
When I looked back this morning to find the plan that we showed, some of that's dated in early 2023. And,
Yeah.
here we are, just
Yeah.
getting around to starting the construction. So that piece of it, but that's been out there anyway, all the highway funds that come with the feds have those type of restrictions.
Yeah.
Other state impacts, no, not from the highway perspective is where I would see it the most. I wouldn't say there's any big.
I know there's a reference to what the one Swanton, I think I've asked the question before, am I the only person who ever asked you guys about merger? Does anybody ever talk to you?
Well,
Run into anybody who asks you about, hey, why not a merger?
I guess.
Down to about a minute and a
Yeah,
half. You
I'll sum it up quickly, and there's been a lot of discussion about it on Facebook. And I've said it to people when they brought it up, it's so very nice, that's their opinion to say it on Facebook.
Yeah.
But talking on Facebook, but there has not been one person from the community, town or village, that has come to the select board
Yeah.
or to the trustees, as far as I know. I could be wrong on that, because I don't
Yeah.
go to every one of their meetings.
Yeah.
But that's where you've got to start it. Somebody's got to come and talk to the board.
And nobody's
Nobody's
done
come.
that. Interesting.
You know,
Guess
I
it's
don't,
just
I
me.
don't, I don't think there's any appetite, because there's
Yeah.
gonna be winners or losers in regarding
Yeah.
to taxes.
That's right.
And that's just gonna start a firestorm.
Oh, yeah.
The one Swanton piece is one village and one town working together.
Yeah.
The merger, I mentioned it before, I think on your show. When I mentioned that when I first got into Swanton, I thought my head was gonna get lopped off.
Really?
And that's where the term one Swanton came
Yeah.
in versus merger. And it's,
Interesting.
the idea of the two combining, it'd be great, but because there's winners and losers,
Yeah.
I don't see it happening, and I
don't-
don't think there's much appetite from
I don't see it.
And it sounds like the
myself.
village and town do pretty well together.
We work
We
very
do.
well together.
You do
We
pretty
do.
well.
That whole road bridge closing is a great example
Yeah.
of how we work together to make
Right.
that happen with minimal impact on folks.
I think that's gonna do it.
Okay.
Brian, I refer to you, I think routinely as town manager. Am I?
Town administrator.
Town administrator, you
Right.
should have correct.
No,
Sometimes
that's
I
all
lose
right.
track of that. Anyway, thanks to town administrator
Right.
Brian Savage,
Thank
Joel
you.
Clark, the select board chairman. And again, a couple of contested select board races, Joel being challenged by Alan Letourneau for a 3-year term, and Nick Brasso, Brendan Kelly, and the appointed incumbent Brendan Long, all challenged and all running for a 2-year term. Thanks to Josh Pryor, my key producer out there. I'm Richard Cowperthwait. Don't forget, town meeting day is getting close, Tuesday, March 4th. Thanks for watching us here on Northwest Access TV. See you next time.